If you know anybody who's on holidays at the moment, particularly in Europe, you might be struck by how surprising it is to see this almost retro use of social media where they're posting, here's what I ate for lunch, here's me in front of a landmark. I've got a few friends who are overseas at the moment, and it's such a stark contrast because it feels like what social media isn't anymore. And I only realised that when I started seeing those photos again. But as social media has evolved, the baseline expectation for posting keeps rising. We've been posting, well, some of us, for 15 years now. And it started off with sort of dashed off tweets. Then it became carefully composed Instagram photos, which were replaced in turn by TikTok clips, which are increasingly showing the production value of television. Have you noticed that? It's now when you flick through, everything's moving towards short form video content. So there's very few pictures of people's breakfasts, very few pictures of sunsets, very few pictures of people's dogs, or selfies or their families. And women, we know that women are posting less and lurking more. And there are actually 4 reasons for this, which I'm just quickly going to go through and tell me if any of these resonate with you. The first one is, with everything going on in the world, a lot of which we see via social, thanks to the algorithm, people are feeling self-conscious about posting just sort of mundane, benign updates about their life because, you know, there's a lot of shouting and a lot of assumptions are being made by what you don't post or what you do post.
I think specifically in a context where there is discussions around Gaza and what is happening in the US with ICE at the moment, that anything you post does look tone deaf beside the worst thing happening in the world right now. And therefore people are sort of opting out, and you can't, whether you post or you don't post, that will be weaponized.
Because those things didn't used to be on Instagram so much, but now there's so many brands posting and creators and influencers, they've sort of taken over, and news brands as well. The second reason, which I alluded to earlier, Reels. It's now, whether it's on TikTok or whether it's on Instagram, even on Facebook, people are posting these kind of movie trailer production quality values. And social is a place of work for a lot of people, influencers, creators, and brands. So these are big budgets. It takes a lot of time to edit and produce and film these reels, and not everybody's up to it, right?
And that's not an accident. I think, as you say, the average person, women are posting less and less, and that is because of a very intentional algorithm change that happened, which was, we are going to present your content to strangers. This is no longer about friends engaging. Mark Zuckerberg has talked about that. On Instagram, initially it was like I was sharing with my community, and now it's been like—
yeah, people who chose to follow you.
Yeah.
So they were interested in what Jessie had for breakfast, or maybe that you got a haircut.
Now you're performing to strangers, and therefore it is the erasure of context, which brings it back to, you know, your— I suppose either you post about everything all of the time or you post about nothing.
That context is really important, and that's the next point, is that millennials who grew up on social media, like you two, you're moving into middle age and seeking more privacy in your lives. You don't want to be perceived all the time. That sense of, I don't want to show the world what I'm doing. Like, it's almost like everybody's woken up from this collective fever dream of, why were we just sharing all the private moments from our lives, firstly with a bunch of people who we might, you know, the person you went to school with, or an ex-boyfriend or an ex-boyfriend's mother that still follows you. And now it's literally, why would I want to share those things with strangers? And that idea of being perceived by people either who you don't know very well or who you don't know at all. And then the fourth reason is group chats. This is relatively new. Over the last few years, if you wanted to share an observation about something, a picture about something, some news that you'd got a promotion or that you'd had to put your dog down, you would do that on social media. Now you're much more likely to do it in a group chat.
I think there's a fifth reason, AI. As AI scrapes the internet for fodder, people are understanding you don't want to put your baby photo up there because your baby's going to end up in AI and being used by AI to make a completely unrelated video.
So, Jessie, I was reading this amazing piece about posting ennui, which is kind of like everyone's feeling a bit weird about posting. It was in the New Yorker this week. I certainly feel that way. I used to do Instababbles on Instagram all the time where I'd just sort of chat, spontaneously while I put my makeup on. A couple of months ago, I felt uncomfortable about doing that and I stopped doing that. And I used to post lots of sort of getting ready videos and stuff. I don't do that anymore. And I loved this idea of understanding why. And it said in this article, social now is just used for punditry, provocation and promotion. Does that ring true for you?
Yes, and it is my greatest concern, like reading this, about who we're leaving social media to, because I think it's a very skewed vision of who people are, what they care about, morality, ethics, tone, discourse, all of those things. It's being left to the content creators. Now when someone uploads something onto social media, it's sort of like, oh, are you trying to be a content creator? Like, because you kind of don't know why else.
It feels vulnerable because and people talk about feeling cringe when they post something.
But why is that bad? Why don't we just leave it to the professionals?
Well, I suppose the reason why I worry about leaving it to the, in inverted commas, professionals is because of the tone of that conversation. You get the extremes on both sides. You get the people, like exactly what it said here. You get people who are provocative on purpose.
But we're also, Jessie and I are professionals and we don't want to do it anymore. You haven't posted on social for a long time, have you?
No.
But like normal people, like sometimes I have to go onto TikTok and I scroll or I scroll on Instagram and I go, the normal people aren't here.
Yeah.
The normal people have left this party. The normal people are all watching.
Yeah.
It's like
lurkers.
You know
Right,
what?
I
It's
see.
like it's a party and it's 4 a.m. and all the normal people with normal lives went home.
Yes.
And you look around and you think all parties are like this all of the time. And people are throwing things and there's
That's so
vomit in the
true.
corner
Yeah.
and there's like people on the hard drugs.
Yeah.
And you're just looking around going, this is terrible.
And then people telling you about Amazon Prime sales.
And people being way too intense.
Yeah. And it's descended into chaos. And you go, what has happened to parties? And it's like,
Okay.
no. It's not the party. It's the people who are left.
But on the flip side, Jessie, I'm going to attempt a more optimistic take on this trend, which is maybe the normal people, quote unquote, have just realized that real life is much better than social media. And now they're prioritizing IRL experiences. This is my theory as to why we've all suddenly become obsessed with tennis. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
I know you always liked tennis.
I was like,
but
yes.
everyone's watching the Wimbledon front row this year so much more than they ever have in past years. And I feel like the hype around sporting events, around the Eras tour, around live music generally is because people are turning to real life more. They're valuing it more. And I've noticed that even in my group chats, particularly with American friends, because the enormity of what's going on is difficult to summarize and get at, people are even retreating from group chats, or maybe they're just not talking to me. Either way.
Here's
Jessie,
the
I
problem.
can't believe you haven't said the word capitalism.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right, is that these social media companies couldn't charge any of us to be on it, right?
Yeah.
And in fact,
And
there
post
are
pictures of our breakfast.
Yes, I remember the that incredible documentary called The Social Dilemma made the point that it is one of the widest used products that everyone would refuse to pay for. In fact, most people not only wouldn't pay $1 to use it, they would pay $1 not to. And the only people who have upheld these companies is advertisers, is like, and I think that that's eroded trust. But the reason why, Amelia, I think your optimism is totally misguided is because people have not left the party and gone home. They are standing by the windows,
Agree.
addicted to watching what's going on. People, if you looked at the time people are spending on social media, that hasn't gone down. That has not gone down. No.
That's the thing.
That's
We're not posting, we're lurking now. Men have always been lurkers, right? Women have always been posters, commenters, likers, sharers. But now women aren't doing that anymore.
Right.
And not as much. And as Jessie said, we're looking through the window. And the problem with that, if we'd have just left the party, that's different. Let them,
eat cake.
But because we're watching it, it's skewing our idea of reality.
Right.
Yeah. And I think as well that the other element to why millennials in particular stopped posting is because we watched as the dumb stuff that the famous people posted got dug up. So the dig, which we've talked about on this show.
It was weaponized.
It was all weaponized. So
the
I
first
think
time that happened was Trevor Noah.
Yes. When was that?
When he was named to the Daily Show chair after Jon Stewart left. So that was when the Daily Show was absolutely at its peak. Trevor Noah was named the new chair, and people dug up all these sort of fat-phobic, fat-shaming tweets.
How many careers have been, destroyed might be too big a word, but have been impacted?
Well, it's that idea of social excavation, which is why, when Lauren Sanchez Bezos got married, she wiped her Instagram. It's this idea, and if you look at a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha's social, they'll only have on main, which is in their feed, they'll only have like 3 or 4 posts because they're mortified by the idea of, for us, for millennials and Gen Xers, it was like a record of everything.
Every time we'd eat an avocado toast in a sun-dappled room.
You go back and it was a record of our relationships. It was almost like a public diary. But this idea of being perceived and not wanting to be perceived, that's something that Gen Zs and Gen Alphas are much more savvy about because they don't want people drawing conclusions about them because of something they posted 2 weeks ago, let alone 2 years ago.
I think that's why Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift have never followed each other on Instagram because they know that the unfollow would become such a big story.
Which I find it interesting that Gen Alphas and Zs have pulled back because when I look at my own social media usage, and if I'm being entirely honest with myself, I think it was indexed a lot on whether or not I was courting, like in my single life. So I wonder if you're on sort of Hinge or you're on Bumble and you're
but it's more curated.
Actively dating.
It's more curated and with less shots because that's
because you want to be perceived when you're single.
You don't want someone going back and seeing pictures of you with your exes or, pictures of you don't necessarily want to be known in that public way. Whereas our generation, it felt like we really wanted to be known. It's like, remember MySpace, which it was like, what are your favorite books? What are your favorite movies?
And it happened quickly. Like I remember I had my first child in 2018 and practically the first thing I did was post a picture of him on Instagram. By the time I had my second child in 2020, I was not putting a photo of her on the internet ever.
Yeah, wow.